At exactly 4 in the morning, when even the raccoons are calling it a night, I got jolted awake, not by my alarm, not by some weird dream, but by this furious pounding on my front door, so loud and shrill, I'm pretty sure half the zip code woke up right along with me. My heart hammered as I scrambled to the window, and what do I see? Karen. Yeah, that Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, standing under the street lamp, decked out like she's about to host the Met Gala, flanked by two guests who looked more like they'd wandered off from a cocktail party than anything else. She's screeching, red-faced, demanding I move my Jeep from my own damn driveway because her very important guests apparently needed the spot. And as I'm just starting to process how insane this is, red and blue lights start flashing because Karen actually called 911 over a parking spot at 4 a.m. My house is suddenly lit up like a crime scene. I yank on a jacket, crack the door, and bam, hit with a blast of Karen's perfume and her Banchion caffeine voice, accusing me like I'd robbed the community bank or something. You're violating emergency hospitality codes, she yells, finger waving in my face. The HOA gives me the right to reassign parking as needed. You're being selfish. And right then, the cop steps out of his cruiser, looking so done with life it's like this is his fourth Karen encounter of the week. He asks if the Jeep's mine. I say yes. He gives me this smirk, like, buddy, I already know this is nonsense. Karen starts spinning her speech, dropping names and HOA bylaws, her guests looking like they wished they'd Ubered instead. My neighbors start popping out, bathrobes, phone cameras, some just peeking from behind blinds. This is the best show they've had in years, I guarantee. Karen claims my driveway is basically community property. The cop pinches the bridge of his nose and explains, slowly, that private driveways are not a police matter. She gasps like he's committed treason. I'll escalate this to the highest level of HOA authority, she shouts, storming off with her guests as the cruiser rolls away. When I closed my door, you'd think I'd feel relieved, but all I felt was this coil of dread and, honestly, disbelief. I knew then, this wasn't just about a Jeep. Karen wasn't going to let this go. By sunrise, the street's buzzing. Neighbors ask if she really called the cops over my car. Some laugh, others warn me. Karen has a long memory and an even longer list of grudges. Sure enough, within hours there's talk of an emergency HOA meeting about my ongoing disturbances. I just shake my head, pour coffee, and dig out the ancient, dog-eared binder of HOA bylaws. Turns out, Karen's clinging to some vague clause about common parking areas. Only, it's crystal clear, private driveways are not common. I highlight everything, snap photos, and wait for the showdown. When I show up that evening, the clubhouse is packed. Karen's at the front with her board member minions, looking way too smug for her own good. She launches into this speech about community harmony and the spirit of hospitality, trying to paint me as the neighborhood villain. Let me back up a sec, I say when it's finally my turn. I lay out the binder, flip to the right section, and calmly explain that driveways are private property, period. I read out the bylaw word for word, let everyone see the highlights. Karen turns red, tries to shout me down, but then Greg, a neighbor I barely knew, stands up and says, she did this to me, too. Over my own driveway. The whole room shifts. Suddenly, it's not just me on trial. It's Karen's entire regime. One by one, folks start chiming in, wind chimes, mailbox colors, trash cans out for 10 minutes too long. Karen tries to regain control, but the tide's turned. The board president finally bangs the gavel. No violation, case closed, driveways are private. Karen storms out, muttering about appeals. You know, it would be funny if it wasn't so exhausting. I get home, park my Jeep in the driveway like it's a flag planted on a battlefield, and for a second, I feel proud. But deep down, I know Karen isn't done. And I'm right. The next morning, there's a neon orange violation notice taped to my door, something about my Jeep being parked too long. No such rule exists. I checked twice. Next day, another notice, tire marks on driveway concrete. I almost laugh out loud. Karen's strategy? Bury me in paperwork until I crack. Instead, I go full counter surveillance. High-def cameras all over my yard. That first night, I catch Karen creeping around with a flashlight, inspecting the edge of my property. When she sees the red camera light, she ducks back inside. I save the footage, label it Karen Midnight Patrol, and brace for the next round. Sure enough, There's a party at her house, a real who's who of HOA snobs. She directs guests to park in my driveway again. But I'm ready. I'd installed steel bollards at the entrance that morning after catching wind of her plans. First guest tries to pull in, sees the barricade, reverses, blocks the street instead. Karen storms over, demanding I remove the posts. I point to the cameras, the bylaw, and tell her the board already ruled. The party turns into chaos. Cars blocking mailboxes and hydrants, tow trucks showing up, guests muttering as their luxury sedans get hauled away. Neighbors are recording the whole circus. When Karen tries to storm my porch, she slips on the curb. Yeah, that happened, and the whole crowd bursts out laughing. Her reputation, her party, her authority, gone, just like that. Afterward, more notices, more threats. Anonymous notes in my mailbox, rants in the neighborhood's group chat. A few neighbors even switch sides, openly defending me online, which only makes her madder. But the real twist comes when Karen tries to buy the vacant lot next door, plans to turn it into community parking, aka a permanent launching point for her nonsense. I can't let that happen. I pull every string, buy the lot myself. When she finds out, she loses it, screams at me on the street. I just show her the deed and smile. Within a week, I've built a tall fence and installed motion-activated sprinklers. Her guests learn the hard way. Nothing says private property like a jet of ice-cold water at midnight. At this point, even the neighbors are making memes. Karen in a snorkel. Karen's guests floating away in a raft. The whole mood shifted. People aren't scared anymore. They're laughing. Still, Karen isn't done. She files more complaints about the fence, the sprinklers, the color of my mailbox. All dismissed. She tries to host another party, but nobody comes. Her power, for the first time, is crumbling. But of course, she tries one last desperate move. She drags me to court, claiming I'm obstructing community harmony and causing emotional distress. Her lawyer's barely hanging on as I lay out my evidence. Bylaws, video, testimonies from Greg and other neighbors. The judge doesn't even blink. Case dismissed, warning Karen about harassment, threatens sanctions for future nonsense. Walking out of court, I get a standing ovation from neighbors who'd once tiptoed past Karen's house in fear. But honestly, the best moment is just getting home, parking my Jeep in the driveway, and sitting on the porch as the sun sets. I'd like to think it's over, but you and I both know folks like Karen never quit. She doubles down, flyers in mailboxes, late-night drive-bys, leaflets about neighborhood standards. But the cameras catch everything. When she tries to peek over my fence and gets drenched again, even her own dog seems embarrassed. The community shifts, laughter replaces whispers, folks start living again. And then, final act, sirens roll up one night. Karen's out front, waving papers, yelling at the cops. But this time, they're not here for me. They hand her documents, walk her to the cruiser, and drive away as half the block stands watching. Turns out, after months of reports and complaints, she's been cited for misuse of emergency services and harassment, stripped of her HOA power, barred by court order from contacting me or anyone else she's targeted. The silence after is almost sweet. People start dropping by to thank me. Kids ask to play basketball in my driveway. Even Greg shakes my hand and says it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't stood firm. And then, finally, the moving truck comes. Karen leaves. No speech, no drama, just gone. We throw a party. Yeah, a real one this time. Someone brings a Jeep-shaped cake. Neighbors laugh, swap stories, celebrate being free of clipboard tyranny. That night, I park my Jeep right on the edge of her old driveway, raise a soda bottle and a toast, and feel the kind of peace you only get after a war. Later, a young family moves in across the street. Kids playing, parents waving, everyone actually enjoying the neighborhood. The air feels lighter. And looking back, I realize, all of this started with one stubborn Jeep, one act of standing my ground. Sometimes the smallest stands spark the biggest changes. So, tell me, where do you draw the line? Have you ever stood up to someone like Karen? Who decides what's right when community turns into chaos? Drop your stories in the comments. Is it justice, or just a war of stubbornness? I can't wait to see whose side you're on.